Yeah, hello, and welcome to our fourth powwow session. And I would love to welcome all of you, and I hope all of you are doing well in these weird times of Corona. We are experiencing really highly strange times here in Potsdam. So I put myself a little bit smaller here. Uh, and but luckily, we are all healthy. I was at the office today. I think it was my fourth or fifth time during the 8th month that I was seeing the spaces. And most of the time we are still in the offices. And I would like to welcome you to the powwow session of the Global Design Thinking Alliance. And we have a very special guest today. First, our GDTA. Yeah, Steffi is displaying here our netiquette. So you can use the chat. We are not using the webinar mode. We thought it would be good to have all of you participating as interactive as possible. Please raise your hand, type your questions in the chat, and please also switch off your video and microphone during the presentation, so we just see the presenter, and choose between the speaker view and gallery view. I think you are probably all very familiar now with Zoom, and we are still very happy to use that. We will have a little introduction from my side. It will be probably shorter than 10 minutes, and then we have our special guest, Arne from Oosterom, from the Netherlands, to speak. And as you can see, he is standing in the desert right now. I hope that is, I hope the Netherlands are not the desert yet. And then we'll start an open discussion. We end on spot at 5 o'clock. And for all of you who have a little bit more time than 5 o'clock, we'll still have the chat open, and we can continue. And I know that Arne will also have a little bit more time for Q&A. So let me put myself now here. Let me get that speaker view here. Yeah, you see in my background here, you see the Global Design Thinking map. We have currently 20 members. We just got the pleasure to have, excuse me, to have the Politecnico Milano joining as a new member. So now we have 20 members in 5 different continents. It's a great pleasure to have them all. And through the last months, especially coming up during the Corona crisis, we thought how can we build bridges between the different organizations? How can we share knowledge and experiences, and also have some fun and learn from each other? And that was the reason why we started the powwow. And that was actually one of our, that was the last session with our friends from South Africa. And the Cape Town D-School is actually right now on a very interesting path, building probably the first design thinking oriented building, a large several-story building at the campus of Cape Town University. And Richard Paris, the guy in the middle, he's directing this kind of activity. And they were sharing about their learnings in the Corona crisis. That was our last session. And today, I'm very happy to invite Arne van Oosterom. Arne van Oosterom is a person I know since a lot of years. Actually, Arne, I found a picture that is from 2011 or so. It's really, you see, you look as young now as you looked 9 years ago, which is amazing. So, and Arne was a guest speaker also at our first Decon Festival, the conference we did in 2012. The first one, 2017, the second one. And at the first, you gave a highly interesting talk. And I was following your activities from the very, very beginning because you were one of the first movers of design thinking in Europe. You started lots of years ago with your network. You were having that incredible, and you're still running that incredible network. It's in the meantime, it's not just a European network, it's a global network of people who are design thinking professionals. And you are a bridge builder for sure. And you started the Design Thinkers Academy, and without any doubt, you are actually one of the top movers of design thinking, of the idea. And this is why I like your title so much. Design thinking will solve all your problems, and I'm pretty sure you will tell us about that. And I would like to give you the stage now. Please, all of you, welcome Arne from Oosterom. So I give you the stage.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that made me a bit shy. I don't feel that way. I don't feel like one of the big movers. And I tell you why. And I hope to be a bridge builder. And I'll tell you why those are quite important words for me, and especially now. But my title, design thinking will solve all your problems, it came quite spontaneous, and then I think a day or two later, when we basically posted it, I thought, oh, that's an interesting claim. How am I going to make that into a story that makes sense? So I'm going to try to make sense out of it. I'm going to try to make sense out of a couple of things, actually. So my story will be about my personal journey, and I hope you will be able to relate to that, because it's a journey of searching, which hasn't ended. But it started with me being basically a bit lost. And I'm talking about 2004, 5-ish, where I felt lost. I was working in, mainly sort of like communication design and advertising. And advertisement, well, I think this slide kind of shows you a little bit what I think of advertisement. When you're young, so to speak, especially that time, when you wanted to be in design and in creativity, communication design and advertisement was really very sexy, really cool to be in, right? You can win all these amazing awards, and it looked really, really cool. But I never really felt at home there, and I don't think I ever felt at home anywhere. I actually wanted to be a musician. My first job as a photographer, and I did theater. I love doing theater. I did stand-up comedy. And I worked at corporates, and I always, never felt at home. And so creativity was sort of something I was hoping that in this kind of space of, design, advertisement, communication design, I could kind of combine things like photography and storytelling and theater and the likes. And it happened to be that way for a while. But after a while, I felt kind of empty. It was like, really, is this all I'm going to be doing? I'm going to sell this kind of stuff. And yes, that is Santa Claus with a cigarette. And you're thinking, that is really weird. Why would you have Santa Claus with a cigarette? Nowadays, that would be impossible, right? Because we all know that cigarettes are unhealthy and it causes cancer. Santa Claus is there for children. So that's a really weird combination. But in a way, this is kind of common. Actually, Coca-Cola is not really healthy either, I think. And actually, they invented Santa Claus. I mean, Norman Rockwell, the artist who painted St. Nicholas Santa Claus for Coca-Cola, he was, that's where it all came from. And that's perfectly normal to us. And so I felt like, I don't know where, I don't know. I want to kind of get out of this space, but I don't know where to go. And so I kind of felt very much like searching and very much alone. But then, I found that, there's that I was kind of in between all these bubbles, and I never really belonged to any of these bubbles. And I felt that I didn't know, I didn't have any connection, or I belonged to multiple bubbles, but they all made no sense to put them together. So I was always sort of having this feeling that I was in between. I'm not an expert in anything. I'm a generalist. I'm curious. I want to learn. I want to work with people I meet. I wanted to have that freedom of using my curiosity and not being kind of, pinned down with anything. And that made no sense because that's not really a profession at that time. I'm talking 2005 and 6. And feeling, that you're a trespasser every time. Like, I'm not a researcher, you're not a consultant, you're not a business analyst, you're not this, you're not that, and that's all true. I'm actually a school dropout. I have dyslexia, which means that every time a system was kind of presented to me, in school, all the school system, it just didn't fit with my wiring, with the way my brain is wired. So I became, in a way, very comfortable not fitting in, because I never do anyway. And I started creating all these coping and these mechanisms in my personality that kind of helped me kind of, cope with that chaos or system that I didn't really belong to. But I did feel that way, and I still do actually, that I'm always like a trespasser, because I never really be expert in anything. I'm in the space in between, and I felt that way. And then at one point, in 2005, I guess, someone started mentioning, I was at a lecture, and there was a Stanford professor, and he mentioned design thinking as sort of this space in between, this gray area between all these specialisms and these experts. And at the same time, service design in Europe was kind of emerging, which I thought was really interesting. With my agency I was working with at the time, where I was creative director, I was already kind of doing sort of service design project. We were trying to do that because it made sense to me. It made sense to no one else, by the way, not my colleagues, not my clients. Nobody really understood this holistic point of view, or this kind of this mindset, or connecting things. It made no sense to anyone. It made sense to me. So I tried to kind of find a job at agencies, and they said, "What are you? Are you like are you creative, or are you a strategist?" And I said, "Well, what do you mean? Like, are you like a creative director, or are you a strategy director?" And I just didn't understand, because again, it wasn't my bubble, and to me it was that why would that kind of be separated? I never really got that. So, but service design and design thinking, and somehow it kind of, in this barren land, I thought, wait a minute, there's this thing that, design thinking, is that in between everything? Is that kind of, so I remember that as my mindset has been, it allowed me to say, hey, I can connect things, and it's okay to be multiple things, and have interest in multiple things. So for me, it was liberation. So when I say it solved all your problems, at that time, it felt like, well, this might solve all my problems. This might solve, me not belonging to anywhere, being a generalist, being curious. So design thinking was sort of this moment of liberation for me. So I loved it. And in 2006, I left my agency, and I started Design Thinkers and Design Thinkers Academy group. And with this idea of, I'm going to create a global movement, and Twitter was there. Social media, yes, I maybe I don't look as old. I think so that picture maybe made me look a little younger. I don't know, or now the camera made me a lot younger, but I'm actually from a generation that Twitter and Facebook. I grew up with none of that, and so that is something you can't kind of nowadays you can't really go back in time where you say, did we do without social media? Anyway, Twitter was there. So we were able to connect people really quickly on social media, because everyone all of a sudden was there. So it allowed me to create this community. And I love that, like, having discussions and conversations. And so here was this kind of this flower in this barren land, which I really liked. And then it's around 2000 and say 10, 11, 12, somewhere there. I read this book. It's called Orbiting the Giant Parable, which really inspired me, because I felt that, design thinking and service design was getting kind of crowded. I mean, it wasn't like the original community, and it wasn't the and so the book. This is the book, by the way, Orbiting the Giant Hairball, is all about how you have to kind of orbit. Sort of giant hairball is the corporate, is the company, is the big corporates. And if you want to survive, if you don't want to kind of be sucked into the hairball, you have to kind of orbit around it. But if you go too wide and you go too far from the hairball, basically you fly out into space and you never return. So you have to be really careful in balancing sort of that orbiting or the hairball. And so I felt that, in a way, design thinking and service design and the likes were kind of being sucked into the hairball. And I'm speaking personally, a very personal feeling of like, oh, it becomes very much a sales tool, and it's very much again back to how do we sell more stuff to people. And the other thing that kind of, and this is like the last few years, all of a sudden everything needs to be faster, and we're not doing. It started with the idea that we were doing workshops, but now we're not even doing workshops. We're doing sprints, and we're in Scrum, together, and so this is like we're running like mad. And there's actually research that says there's a lot of burnout in design thinking, and because of all these sprints and this pressure, because we were getting sucked into the hairball. That's at least the way I felt, and I felt worried about that. I thought, oh no, I'm back again in the same thing. And in the Netherlands, in Dutch, we have a saying, which I can't translate it. Maybe there's a German translation for this, but I don't think there's an English one. But it's called someone who calls out in a desert, someone who's basically shouting in the desert, and you're saying that there's more to design thinking than 6 steps. And like, yeah, it's no one. That's sort of a feeling that I had, which probably wasn't right because I actually did kind of meet people along the way, but I thought, oh, we're back again, to the same game. It's again, fulfilling these corporate, profit growth kind of ideas instead of making the world a better place and creating communities, positive impact, which is something I really wanted. So there's this, the hairball again, and like, how do I get out of this hairball? I started realizing, because that's just part of the story, because that's sort of what I felt after a while, and felt that I was losing it, and I thought all of a sudden, design thinking is 6 steps, and you put it in a box and you follow the 6 steps, and there you go, innovation or something. There's your solution, and no, that doesn't work that way. There's way more to it, but it isn't about design thinking. It isn't about service design. It isn't about UX. It isn't about agile. It's not about lean. It's not about all these buzzwords. There is something going on. There's the big change happening in the world. It has to do with the rise of artificial intelligence in the unknown future. We have no clue what the effect and the consequences will be of this technology. The global warming, there's so many things going on at this moment that make the world in the future very unpredictable. So there's this wave, but a wave is created by a groundswell. So we might see the wave and we say, it's design thinking, or it's human-centric design, or whatever buzzword you want to use, but there's something underneath. So a wave is created by a groundswell. What is underneath is really interesting. That's what it's about. It's not about buzzwords. It's not. So what are we trying to achieve, and what is the thing that we need to do? Why are we coming together? How are we going to come together, and how are we going to make a positive impact on this world? Because we need generalists. We need people who understand how to build bridges and how to connect. We need specialists too, but we have loads of them, lots of them. You can't let technology over to the tech people. You need people who understand empathy and creativity and et cetera, et cetera. So again, I was thinking, well, and in this, and interestingly enough, in the time of COVID, I also started thinking about how do I now, where's that flower, because it's there and it's still there, and I don't. I'm not the only one who doesn't fit into a bubble. There's actually a lot of people. So I started doing research. I'm doing this podcast, and I'm interviewing all these people. I'm meeting so many people who also don't feel that they belong to one world or one bubble. There's meeting people who believe and feel that they are, they're somehow in the space in between. And I started realizing that actually that space in between is actually a wonderful space. That is actually the space to be in. And that reminded me of kintsugi, which is a Japanese art of actually fixing pottery with, and you might know this, but I think it's such a beautiful, a metaphor for, not just hiding what is broken, but elevating it and making it more beautiful because it's part of the history and the story, and it makes it more valuable and more beautiful to show it. And I think this is sort of where I want to be. This is where I think we need people to help heal broken pieces, but keep that and make that visible and make that special. And the other thing is this concept of ma, which is about the space in between. There's a negative space, and it's the idea of that the negative space around us is what actually is the essence of things. Like if you have a clay pot, in the language of ma, the essence of the pot is actually the space in between. It's not just the clay, but also the space outside of it. So this is actually the essence of things. This is what shapes things. So this is where we need to kind of pay attention to, and we need to spend time and be aware of that, and not just be in sprints and run, and also think about what's the essence of things. It's not just the thing that is right in front of you. It's actually the space in between, which makes, which creates these shapes. And I met so many people. All of a sudden, it's not Twitter, but now all of a sudden, it's like video conferencing tools. Everyone's online, everyone around the world, and all the borders disappeared. All the limitations disappeared. I don't have to fly to Africa. I don't have to fly to the US. I can just be, behind my desk, which I don't always like, because I like to kind of be with people and hug people and give them, shake their hands, and and be with them, because human connections is really important. But it's also so cool that it creates so many opportunities. So so I started again using this wonderful tool to create these connections. So this is an example. My Wednesday Web Jam, for instance, now the 38th time next Wednesday, which is like amazing. And there is such a hunger for connection. And so I discovered that there is the outside world, and there is this wave and this groundswell of people that makes me so hopeful. And we just have to figure out, how to kind of get past the buzzwords and get past sort of the frameworks and the 6 steps or the 4 steps or whatever process maps we have, to kind of start thinking about what is the thing that we need to start doing, and how do we get together. And so I left my barren field with the one flower, and this is sort of my they're close to my home, by the way, my vision of the future, and that's also the end of my story. So thank you very much for listening. I hope it made sense to you.
Thank you very much, Arne. And you see others also. A very nice story. Thank you very much. So, and also a great picture at the end. Now we can switch to the videos on, please, all of you. And I move back to the mode. So,
it's nice to do this talk because it started with this title, and then I started looking for pictures that meant something to me, and I'm an improviser, so I just mentioned that I did theater, but I improvise, and so it's always to me as also a little bit of a surprise what actually comes out as a story. So I was kind of like, where is this going? Okay, I hope it makes sense. But it's but I try, because it helps me to speak from the heart. Instead of being too, I mean, you're always prepared if you do this quite often, but I hope that came across that was from me.
Yeah. Yeah, Arne, you're doing so many different things. You have established a global network of design thinking professionals, the design thinkers. You're constantly giving courses, and what is I'm listening to you. I got the feeling the Corona crisis, what we are seeing right now, is actually something you were adapting very easy to. So because you are already this kind of virtual network around the globe, you had to use the telephone and email and maybe a lot of Zoom calls anyway. So how do you see that moving on for yourself and your community for the next month and looking at it 2021 or so?
So I think that yeah, because I'm really comfortable with chaos, because that's basically my mind is always in chaos. And I'm pretty comfortable with it. So when everything else is in chaos, actually the world moves towards me. I'm like, oh yeah, I've been here all along. So oh now everyone's in chaos. That's fine. So it's a creative period, a moment. And actually, there's a lot of I mean, you can, and there's even research that says, in times of chaos, if there's too much structure, you kind of kill your creativity. But so you need a little chaos. If it's too much chaos, it's also no good, by the way, because then everything kind of falls apart. But there's this balance between kind of structure and chaos, which I always look for, and I like that. And so Corona, this crisis, kind of created a bit of chaos that was good for me as a creative person, not good for me as a father and a son of parents who are in their 80s. So both being quite worried, but at the same time, it allowed so many new things to flourish and new connections to be made. And yes, my network, my company is a network, and so we are in like 24, 25 countries. So we've always been kind of doing this remotely, and so I was kind of comfortable doing that anyway. But it's specifically around working like our training programs, consultancy projects that really, I mean, it's not like we weren't going like, yay, everything collapsed, yoo-hoo. No, because all the physical, get-togethers, all the training, our conferences, everything kind of stopped in March. Basically, one day from one day to another, it was like nothing. We were really busy, we were extremely successful, and then boom, everything stopped. And it has stopped for now, like, what's that, 8 months? So it was kind of both scary and creative, but I believe these things go hand in hand. So I think that being scared or being anxious is energy. So, if you go on stage and you're not nervous, something's wrong. You need the nerves. You need to be a bit scared to kind of, get all your senses to work. So I think for the one thing that I would advise people is stop running, because it's not about running. It is you have to also stop, every now and then and look around and see the patterns and see what's moving and see what's improving and see what's falling apart and understand sort of what's going on. And you can't do that if you just keep running. So allowing yourself to kind of do things that maybe make no sense, like our Wednesday web jam is basically, every Wednesday we have this jam. And there is no, I mean, there's an agenda, but there's no real clear purpose except for learning and failing forward together with a community. It's like this community here, it's just, getting experience with being online and doing these, creating human connections through these video conferences. But there was no like clear business model there. It wasn't like, yeah, and then we do this and then we make so much money. No, there's no. So business wise, no, made no point. But it's like, I always say, it's like you throw a little pebble into the lake and you create this intervention or this prototype or something. And then you have to kind of, sit back and watch and feel what's going on. And if you don't, you just kind of keep running from task to task to task, and you're missing all these opportunities. So I think if you're, a design thinker, whatever that is, or a creative thinker, whatever that is, but if you are able to kind of sometimes, allow yourself to observe and stop and look and listen and feel, I think you're going to find this time of crisis next. Obviously, also is a terrible time for a lot of people in businesses, etc. But also a really, really cool creative time where we have the opportunity to shape things. And like we're doing, and only, the last time we met, it's also quite a long time ago. So for me, this is like almost symbolic. Like this has also brought us together again. It's like, that's so cool. Like, so this is like this symbolizes for me a lot of it, like the opportunities and the new and old connections that are being made.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Hey, any question? I don't see anything in the chat yet here. I don't see, but just feel free to just speak if you have something to ask or to mention,
Sure,
to
yeah.
contribute. Yeah, but Arne, if there is right now, I would love, since I joined one of your web jams, the Wednesday sessions, and I missed the one yesterday, which I thought would be was a great idea to have people joining virtually outside, not just inside, as most of us are right now. So I see no one sitting in a car. I see no one riding a bike. I see no one taking the dog outside or so. But this is what you did yesterday in the evening. So how did that work out? So I missed it. Maybe you could share some
I
of
mean,
you.
isn't it amazing in a way that we have this technology? So if I think back at the early days of design thinking, sort of the early 2000s, a lot of the technology that we have available now wasn't available. So going outside with while video conferencing and being in breakout groups while taking a walk outside, is the possibility of it is actually, I mean, it's actually really amazing. Sometimes you have to kind of also start realizing that the stuff, and now like a moment like this is actually so amazing that you can do this. And so, but the one thing that we're looking for is human connection. How do you make this human connection when we're all in this little box? And I can't. I mean, I see your faces, and some of you I don't. But it's not really like there's a human connection yet, right? So how do you do that? So that's my. And how do you create a safe space for people to to be really part of it and feel that they're able to contribute and be their authentic self. And so the walk was sort of a nice experience. It's like taking a walk with a friend. So we had breakout groups, and so the first one with 2 people, and the second breakout was with 4 people. So basically, you're outside, and you show sort of where you live. And so I had a conversation at one point with one person who was in Ghana, and one person was in Miami, and I was in the Netherlands. The other person was in South Carolina, and so we were walking, and so they were surprised. First of all, it was getting dark where I was, but also because in my part of the world, and most of you maybe also, it is autumn. So they were like, oh, the leaves are falling from the trees. That's like, yeah, it's autumn. No, but I've gotten so and in Miami it's always green and there's palm trees. But so it seems insignificant, but if you put someone that you see in their context and they talk about their garden and they talk about what's in front of their house and little things, it changes the way you connect to someone and the way you see someone. So that was a nice experiment. It worked really well. And so if I think that if you work together with people remotely, in a business, for instance, and you only see each other in meetings like this, take a walk, go outside one of these things if you are able to, if you're not in kind of a strict lockdown. But take a walk with each other. It really it changes the way you talk, and we know that in workshops that we do them, and you say to people, take a break. We'll go back to your journey maps or whatever stakeholder maps or whatever prototyping thing you do. Okay, or go and take a walk with someone, and they come back differently because they had different conversations, right? So I really liked it, and it's possible. Like it worked. People had their connection worked, and maybe every now and then it was a bit like clunky, but so yeah.
Yeah. What is the plan? Do you do something next Wednesday?
Yeah, actually me to get, so usually we have guests, but every now and then we as the crew are allowed to, we allow ourselves to run an experiment. So I do leadership training, and we are going to look at something that is around psychological safe space in an online environment and constellations. So not sure if you're familiar with constellations, but so I work with a psychologist, Michael Thorley, and he does a lot of change projects for big corporates, but he worked with constellations. And basically what it is looking at who are the people in your system, and what is the system, this sounds maybe a bit vague if you're not familiar with it, but what is the system actually telling you? And so it's part of it is also embodiment. So the experiment is, can you actually do embodiment and constellations online with a group of people? And some simple variation of constellations would be, take Post-its, write on every Post-it a name of someone in your environment. Could be work, could be personal, could be both. And then put them on the floor, anywhere you feel that they should be on the floor, any way you want, and just, be aware of where you put them and just put them somewhere on the floor, and put yourself there too. And so it's a very simple explanation, and Michael can do much better than I do. But then basically you walk around and you feel, this is embodiment, you feel, what these names tell you. Where are you more comfortable? Where do you walk to? Where don't you walk to? And it works because if there's someone there that extreme case, someone you really dislike, you feel it when you walk there. There's someone you really like, so that's embodiment, and so we're going to do it as simple as this because it's just an hour, but it works because it tells you something that you might already know. There's a little voice in your head saying you should do this, or you actually don't like this, or you should kind of get away from that community, you should go there, or whatever. It's already in your head probably, but it makes it really clear, and it makes you feel, and it makes you very aware of what the system is trying to tell you. So that's what we're going to experiment with. So sometimes we just do simple things like gamification, or that wasn't very simple, by the way. Gamification. We did a game where we used a lot of theater. We did systems thinking, because there's systems thinking is back, systemic thinking. In fact, actually, where I met you, one of the times I met you is at the systems and systemic thinking conferences in Berlin, I think. So now it's constellation, so it's more psychological, it's a little deeper than that. So it's our living lab. So we take on all kinds of topics that are, and then also interesting to us, like, I don't know, it's failing forward together.
There's I just looking at the chat here, there's some comment from Rimante Rusaite from YouTube channel. So we are streaming on YouTube as well, as you know. Thanks, Arne. Love the kintsugi metaphor. I think the type of good chaos might fall into aporia domain within Cinefin framework. And there is Naila, actually, she's here in the chat. She is asking, could you talk more about how to overcome design sprint burnout?
Yeah, just don't do them.
just do that.
Is that too easy? It's like, just don't fall into the trap. Yeah. How do you fall? Yeah. It's difficult because there's a lot of pressure on you because it needs to be quicker and you need to speed up and it has to be fast. And nothing really good comes from that. I promise you. We tend to get sucked into the hairball of short-term thinking and and quick wins. And I understand. So design thinking is really good at doing things quickly, but it's iterative. So it is this. Actually, the symbol you see over here is my little. It's a double diamond, but it's also your sort of the eternity sign, right? It's forever. It is this mindset that needs to change. Here you can do a sprint, but what is the expectation of the sprint, right? And it's just, for me, the whole language is wrong when it comes to that. It actually, what we need is long-term thinking, and we need to kind of think about, how do we make things sustainable and how do we build things for future generations? And so there's a whole idea of everything needs to be, translated into profit, but really, I think that needs to change. So how do you get out of it? It's a very difficult choice to make. I would say, make sure that you are not get sucked into that world if you want to get it, if you don't want to. But if you enjoy it, go. Change is happening. I don't believe that we are creating that change. I think it is happening. We are sensing it, and we're part of it. And I think it's our task to be aware of it and to make sure that we kind of ride that wave. All right. And so I don't think you can say, I'm going to stop. I remember that I had the picture of me shouting in the desert. I've been shouting that nobody's listening. So that's not a battle you're going to win, but we've got to take small steps. And we're doing that, small steps to make people realize that if you want to do the right things, you have to do them well. And it is about really understanding what is it you're doing, what is the question you're answering, and take the time to do it right. And yes, it will feel like you're slowing down, but actually you're going to do the right things the right way. And that takes time. And sometimes you just have to be able to stop and to say, don't rush, take time. And yes, if you're not in control of it, then just go and learn. And I don't know, I did, and I'm still in these kind of sessions, and I do the best I can. But so speaking from that level, but from level as a human being, I'm saying, I think in a couple of years, maybe 4, 5, 6 years, we're going to look back and realize that these sprints, these are just superficial things, and it's just a sign, but there's more to it. So anyway, that's not an answer. I know it's not an answer. I'm trying to kind of make it. You might see me struggle getting into a positive kind of answer, and I struggle. I can't do it. Like, I just don't do it. Sorry. I'm not cynical. I'm actually quite hopeful. But I really hate everything that has to do with sprints, Scrum, and the language. Sorry.
Yeah, I fully agree that we have to look at the long-term visions, and at the same time, I think still we have to hurry up, and running with sprints is probably a proper way. So we have to avoid to run into the burnouts. I think one of the things is maybe that we are expecting too much from 1 or 2 or more of those sprints and not seeing the larger picture. But there are some other questions and remarks in the chat. For example, Joe Murphy, who appreciates your embracing chaos. He was asking, I find quite often people being anchoring themselves to certain methods or process. As you touched up, how do you deal with getting people to grasp it's not about methods, but about mindset, thinking for yourself, and being comfortable with the unknown and chaos? How do you deal with that?
Yeah. Well, every change starts with one person. It might be cliche, but you know, if you want things to change, it starts with you. So it starts with you being a leader and showing that you can be comfortable with chaos. And I'm not saying it's not scary, because that is part of it, but not avoiding that and saying, listen, this is uncomfortable because we don't know what we're doing and there's chaos. But if you're anxious and you're scared and you're trying to and you're and you start kind of sort of, you know, human beings have these two modes: it's a fight or flee, right? So you're fighting or you're running away. That's usually what we do. And when there's chaos and there's, you know, usually we get a very, if you're stressed, you get a very narrow view of what's going on. So we need people to kind of help, you know, those people that kind of fall in that stress, in that trap, to kind of make them comfortable and create a safe space. So leaders need to create a psychological safe space for people to be either anxious or comfortable or have you know, strange ideas or whatever, but the psychological safe space is what we need, and that starts with leaders like yourself, you know, to kind of create that space for people by starting with you. So you know, I don't think you can. It's a slow process because we come from a world where, you know, when people, specifically in the large corporates, there's a fear of failure, right? So everybody's quite afraid to make mistakes. So it's not going to be changing, you know, tomorrow or the day after. It's going to take a long time. Again, this is why I think, and I understand, you know, your argument about sprints early, but I think the point we're missing is that you know, what we do now also have to benefit next generations, and we're not comfortable with that thought because we're like, I want my kind of benefits, you know, the result of my actions. I want to have the benefits of them now, in my lifetime, and as soon as possible. If you say, well, you might not feel the benefit, but maybe, you know, the next generations will. That's like, yeah, that's, you know, that's not about me. So so I don't mind sprints, but I kind of, to your point earlier, is, you know, it's more like it needs to kind of build towards something that makes sense, and the expectation of what it does needs to change. So there's a bigger change happening, and yeah, I think that in my opinion, this is my personal opinion, if you want to kind of create a safe space for people to be okay of letting go of fixed processes, especially in the beginning of development, being okay with chaos, being okay with not knowing what to do, you have to really kind of you need leaders, or be that leader to allow that. And that's a culture change, and that is big. It's huge. It's happening, but it's step by step, and it's, you know. But I'd be part of that because that's going to be fantastic. And there's going to be new companies. You already see it here and there. There's going to be new companies and new communities that are emerging that will kind of embrace that way of thinking. And so if I look at the future, I think what we'll see more and more are these network organizations that will kind of be very influential. And why would you want to work for a large corporate, you know, the big hairball, you know, if you can work, you know, be free and work in a wonderful ecosystem with people who are your peers, and you are a real owner of what you're doing. I mean, if that's a choice, a lot of people will, you know, they will do that. So I think that's the sort of long answer to that question. It's like patience, and, you know, change starts with us, with one person, with you. That's all I have to say.
Yeah. Yeah, there was actually a nice comment from Hoda Mustafa from Egypt. Welcome, Hoda. Great to see you. She was recommending to use relay races instead of sprints. You know, that might help us. And there is a question also from Marissa Brennan. Hello, Arne. Thank you for a great presentation. This is my first GDTA meeting. It's great to see I'm not alone with the way I process through solving problems and embracing the chaos. What can you do when working in an industry where things have been defined for years of how they have been done? And we all know that. I think breaking the script, but making sure you retain credibility as an early career research engineer. You have any recommendations for Marissa?
Well, if you want to apply design thinking, use design thinking to apply it. This sounds really silly, but what I've seen often is that design thinking is being implemented or being put in place with a very linear way of thinking. So if you think about it in a design thinking way, what do? First, you got to do some research. Go and look what's going on. Build empathy for the people that you think are doing it the wrong way, because maybe are they really? So question everything. Think about, build that, visualize that ecosystem that you're in, and build empathy for the people in it because they have a reason why they act in a certain way and the culture. So you really start understanding the context of where are you and where does it all come from. So you start understanding maybe where there are what we call the soft spots, where you could maybe start a little something. Maybe there's already people out there that are open to change or doing things differently. Maybe there's a project that is safe and doesn't cost a lot of money, and it's nice. You will find, so in my experience, I've never really come across people that if you ask them one-on-one that don't get what we're trying to achieve. So people will understand. Most people will really get it, but they are in a system that kind of makes it impossible for them to move. So find small kind of interventions that you can create to kind of make people come with you. So I always say, don't do a project, create a movement. So do little things, and start a movement, start getting people together and start, create little events and talk to people about this and be thought leader, and because that's basically how you attract people to you when they have a question around, design thinking or whatever you call it that you do. But don't try to change things too quick and make it too big. What we learn from, any kind of creative process, creative methodology is start small, start sketching, start little things. Don't make it too big and enjoy it, and be not also sometimes make sure that you, we always say, have the mind of a child, step back and and play with it and don't take it too serious because you're going to lose your kind of energy for it. Sometimes for me, I like just step back and observe and see all the patterns and then just try to do little things. Don't make it too big and keep having fun because no one in that system means bad. And it's just that the systemic change only happens in small steps. So that's it, and it takes time and patience, and it's not going to be next year. So be okay with that as well.
Yeah.
As the Chinese say, it's not about the goal; it's about the journey.
Yeah, Raluca, you are having a question connecting
Yes,
to.
if I can say it, it's easier than writing it
Yeah.
because it's exactly connected to what you were saying right now. Um, we in Sibiu, we are preparing to launch D-School in the university in Sibiu in Romania, and we have this very big event tomorrow, European event that we are organizing locally. It's called the European Researchers Night. And by the way, I saw your prototyping the DT conference next year, a month ago, I think, where you were going on your bike. And that was such a huge inspiration because
Okay.
this event, European Researchers Night, usually brings to the university around 15,000 people, which come to all our labs and visit all our faculties in the campus. And this year was a very big challenge for us because we had to switch everything to online. And when I showed your video with the prototyping the DT conference to some of the team, we were so excited, but yeah, with a big organization, it's very difficult to get things moving so fast because we were already going through a big challenge this year. And I showed it to our volunteers because we also have a team of student and pupil volunteers. Just yesterday, unfortunately, I forgot about it. And they were so excited. And coming back to my question, how do you find this balance between, taking it slow to match the rhythm of your organization or your colleagues, but also not missing opportunities? Because for us, tomorrow we have an event with the D-School. It's our first event because we didn't want to miss this great opportunity of this big event that's so popular in our community. But on the other hand, it's our first event, and we want to make it like a discussion, something with the students that they just get familiar with the method. But it's also the first event. So where do you draw the line between taking advantage of the opportunity, but not making it too much?
Yeah, good question. I have a hard time saying no myself. So I do kind of, I know exactly what you're saying because there's so many cool things that are happening if you pay attention to it and if you are, you're part of the community and yeah, it's difficult to say no to certain things. But coming back to something that you said earlier, how do you balance the taking it slow and not missing opportunities? So I kind of something I want to say there is that I think that you see more opportunities when you take it slow. And the idea of take it slow means that sometimes you have to stop, observe, and observe what's going on outside of what you're usually doing or outside of the kind of because when you're constantly running, you only go from task to task to task, and this idea of and there's a book called Synchronicity, which I'm a big fan of, and so synchronicity is so I have sorry getting into a long story again, sorry. uh, my father is a scientist and my mother is an artist. My father is someone who says if you can't measure it, it's not true, and my mother is someone who says but I feel it and so it's true, right? And I have both of these voices in my head. So synchronicity is about these worlds coming together. On one hand is this feeling of everything's connected, and so more almost like traditional Asian philosophy or most religions, there's this idea of there's an energy that connects everything. But then my father would say, yeah, nonsense, that's all gobbledygook. But now there is a quantum physics that says, well, there's an energy field that connects everything. These are like, oh, so in my mind, that made sense. That made sense in my mind. Synchronicity is sort of this thing that connects everything, but you have to pay attention to it. There is something that, I always say the simplest thing that you can see is that, if the sun is shining, I live near the beach, and it's Sunday, I think, let's go to the beach. Everyone goes to the beach. It is not like, it's not exactly the same thing, but you kind of experience it that way. So if you don't pay attention to this, if you just don't pay attention to what's out there, if you don't stand still, if you don't kind of sometimes just sit and feel, I can't say that often enough, and just stop running, you will see more opportunities. You might see other opportunities. So you will have more to choose from, which is then obviously a problem. But I think that that is just a case of choosing and saying, but because there's going to be more, it's not like there's not going to be more opportunities, but so that's just then it becomes what can you actually do, and and that's always the choice between can I do both well enough or all these things well enough, or do I have to choose one or two to do them really well? And I think that's just part of all our journey, all our journeys. Everyone's, especially if you are an entrepreneurial spirit, you get, but yeah, that's learning to say no to certain things and be okay with it, knowing that there's more out there. But if you think that that's the only chance you get to do something and there's no other way, follow your gut feeling. Follow your gut feeling. Do this. This constellation thing might help. It might actually help you to say, I get more energy here, and I might not get this big, this hairball. I don't know. I might not feel. So where do we? I'm just guessing. That this D-School thing is really cool, and that feels way more positive to me. I don't know. Maybe the universe is trying to tell you something.
Thank you very much, Arne. We're now at 5 o'clock, so we are at the end of the official part. We will stop the live session on YouTube now. So saying goodbye to all of you. Thank you very much. And we stop also the recording, but we'll continue the chat here for all of you who still want to chat with Arne and amongst each other. And Raluca, good luck for tomorrow for your session. I'm pretty sure follow your guts feelings.
Thank you.
Do the right thing. So thanks again, Arne. It was great. So.